Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the lefts, we go up to the rights, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, April the 10th, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we do try to pride ourselves on being a news podcast, which means that we only use the most reputable sources with award-winning research and journalism. We do not do sensational news like Fox News or News Media or The Blaze or The Daily Wire or extreme left or extreme right publications out there. We simply don't do them. We give you just the facts, nothing but the facts. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language on here, but words do fly. At the same time, there'll be things that might be shown, might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how about we actually start this off with some actual good news for once?
In the last hour, 6 former Mississippi officers were sentenced to 15 to 45 years in prison on state charges in the assault and torture of 2 black men. The officers pleaded guilty to charges including hindering prosecution, burglary, home invasion, and aggravated assault. Now, this all comes after the group, which called themselves the Goon Squad, also pleaded guilty to separate federal charges last year, and they were sentenced to terms of 10 to 40 years in prison. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar is live outside the courthouse in Brandon, Mississippi for us this afternoon. Priya, walk us through the details of the state sentences these men are facing and how this connects to what they've already been convicted of federally.
Yeah, that's right. These 6 law enforcement officers actually pleaded guilty to all of both the federal and the state charges. Most of them were felonies. As you mentioned, home invasion, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, aggravated assault. This all stems from an incident that happened back in January of last year where a white neighbor in Rankin County called a sheriff's deputy and said that she was concerned about 2 black men who were entering a white woman's home. At that point, this deputy mobilized what they called the Goon Squad because they prided themselves on using excessive force, went to that home, entered without a search warrant, and then proceeded to brutally torture these men for a period of 90 minutes, physically, sexually, and psychologically abusing them. And once things had gotten too far, one of those 2 black men ended up shot in the mouth. The law enforcement officers realized they had to cover it all up. So they planted methamphetamine and a gun, according to court records, and actually charged the men with drug possession. But of course, since then, things have been reversed, and now these men are facing their own jail sentences.
And the 2 victims in this case, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, they filed a $40 million civil lawsuit against the Rankin County Sheriff's Office last year. What are you hearing from them? Have they spoken today? Have their families spoken out?
Yeah, we heard from the victims and their families, and they called the sentences today monumental, especially since what the state was recommending, which was actually half of what the judge ended up imposing today. They did deliver victim impact statements inside of the courtroom through their attorney, Malik Shabazz. Let's take a listen to the words of Eddie Parker, one of those 2 victims.
My life was not perfect, but it was mine. I doubt if I'll ever experience it again. I wish I didn't have to experience the memory of this torture session, but I can't do that either. I can't erase my memories, but I will struggle to live on.
And so Vicki and Ellison, now everyone from the courtroom actually moved over to the Rankin County Sheriff's Department because they're calling on the Sheriff Brian Bailey to resign. They say there are systemic problems in the Sheriff's Department and that he knew about it, and it's time for him to go.
All right, and that civil lawsuit.
Well, again, and I don't blame them. But yes, that's a story that we were covering since last year, to where 2 men who literally and figuratively were assaulted by overempowered police who did things that I won't even mention what they did, these men. Even one guy getting executed with a gun in his mouth, and the guy pulled the trigger, and luckily he survived. Now you got to think, if you survived all of that, and again, I kept on saying about 3 podcasts ago about these guys, like they should never see the outside of a prison. Once you have literally overstepped your authority as a law enforcement official, you have no leg to stand on. Matter of fact, your life should be forfeit, considering the fact of what these 6 officers did to these 2 black men. So again, 15 to 45 years, to me, I'm like, it should be life in prison. It should be life in prison because you're public servants that abuse your authority and you went beyond the realm of what you're supposed to do. So in my case, so if it was up to me, your life would be forfeit. But good job, those 2 black men actually suing them for $40 million. Get the money, because again, money is a small comfort. But at the same time, like I said about law enforcement, sometimes the only way to fix these things is to hit them where it hurts. For law enforcement, it's their pensions. And I said this a long time ago. If we tied paying out money to those who are victims of law enforcement malpractice and misconduct, if we tied the pension to what pays out to the victims' families, all this would stop overnight. Because now you're messing with their money. And let's be honest, whenever money's involved in something, that's really the true needle mover of all things. And I hate to say that, especially when it comes to law enforcement, because we can give them body cams. But here's the thing, they can turn off body cams. And I said it before, if they never had the ability to turn off body cams, or if I sat there and said if their body cams were malfunctioning, if they mess with them any way, form, or faction, then whatever they're tied to is moot. They cannot use that as evidence, whether it's arrest or not. But the thing is, all those things we put in place to hold law enforcement accountable are simply not working as well as we thought they were. But if we tie a financial penalty to their pension, again, things will change. But yes, with those 2 men and those 6 men, those 6 former police officers behind bars, may they get suited up with the same people who know they're cops and let the jungle take care of itself. But yes, those 2 innocent black men, get your money. I do not blame you. Moving right along in the news, because this was actually brought up last podcast. And again, college right now, especially with kids who are graduating or kids who are individuals who are entering college, there is a problem right now with FAFSA. And what I mean by that is that right now, FAFSA, as we said last week on this podcast, is that there's an issue due to a tax code line that's causing confusion as far as some students either getting financial aid or not. And the thing about it is, with the FAFSA, they're not getting a lot of help, staffing, equipment, what have you. But the thing about it is, it's being delayed after delay after delay, which for a lot of students who actually depend on college aid, depend on financial aid to actually go to college, this could hit them back, or much or more so or less, actually not allow them to enter college at all. But that's the problem. Is just that when you think about all this, mind you, that college tuition is going up. FAFSA the FAFSA program is having issues, and at the same time, a lot of kids out there who are graduating high school are realizing, why the frack do I need to go to college? Because that's the truth. I mean, once you have that, I mean, keep in mind, college at this point is not the rosy dream that it used to be. I mean, there's a story, and we're covering stories of student loan debt, of President Biden. He can't eliminate student loan debt, but he can chip at it. But anytime he does, you have Republicans who are fighting for the private banks and for the companies that actually give out these loans. They're working hard for the people that purchase them. And at the same time, what they don't want to admit as far as the GOP is concerned, and also some Democrats as well, some Democrats benefit off the fact that a lot of American citizens carry student loan debt. Because if you're in debt, that means you're paying to somebody. If you're no longer in debt, then there's no money they can get out of you. So it's just like renters versus homeowners. Like, for example, if you have a renter, that means that the money, you always have money to, if they want to stay there, they got to pay to stay there. Versus a homeowner, you may have them on the hook for 10 or 20 years, but after that, they own the home. They can no longer pay you after that. So there's only a finite amount of money that you get from them. So they're looking at student loan. They're looking at students who are entering college the same way, where if you cannot afford the tuition, which by the way goes up at every college and university every year, and I still ask that question, why in the world does tuition go up every year, but it's still the same education that you're getting? Your education hasn't improved. Matter of fact, it's sometimes the same professors, sometimes same syllabus, same information, but yet tuition goes up every year, making it impossible unless you are unless you or your family is very well off to actually allow you to go to college. So again, it doesn't help now that going back to the FAFSA program, which is about having the issues as the heyday of Obamacare once did with their healthcare marketplace when it first started and it was crashing. This is a problem that should get fixed. But as we do know, when it comes to the simple fact of actual funding, the Department of Education does not get the same funding that the Department of Defense gets. And the Department of Defense, as I will keep pointing this out, has failed every audit ever given to them, and yet their budget gets increased every time. Imagine being rewarded with more money because you cannot account for it because we're a country that profits off of war. And that's true. Goes into our next story, where again, the U.S., I should say President Joe Biden, is wanting President Netanyahu, or as I like to call him, Israel's biggest welfare queen, wants to have a ceasefire. But yet Netanyahu and Biden are not looking on the best of terms right now, especially after this part.
Admiral, you're not specifying what concrete steps Israel must take exactly.
I gave you some a broad sense of it. We want to see more crossings opened up. We want to see more trucks getting in, particularly from Jordan. We want to see tangible steps at the mitigation of civilian harm, particularly to humanitarian aid workers, but obviously all civilians. But we want to see that they have moved forward on proper steps to deconflict with aid workers as they move around, that the information flow is viable.
Sure, but that's language we've heard for weeks now. You're not talking about sort of telling us how exactly you will measure those measurable steps, right?
What I said was, we're going to examine our policy approaches based on our assessment of the way the Israeli side modifies their behavior, modifies their policy and decision-making processes. And so, first of all, let's see what they say they're going to do, and then let's watch and see how they execute to what they say. And I don't want to get ahead of them on what they plan to say about the changes they're going to make, but we'll base our policy decisions based on an assessment of how they execute to their policy decisions.
And you're not talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the square dance 2x2 step, because again, what he's basically saying, what they're basically saying there is that, well, President Biden wants Netanyahu to allow humanitarian trucks to Gaza due to the fighting between the Israel-Hamas war. Netanyahu has not allowed it. And yet the reporter is asking, why are we supporting Israel when they're not allowing humanitarian aid to those that are not involved in the war? Well, we've suggested some things. We are waiting on them. I don't want to speak for them. And you saw how much. And again, this is the part where I'd say, if I was conservative, I'd be hitting Biden on it, if I didn't care. But because, again, I'm trying to figure out, again, for a country we've been in war for almost the majority of this nation's existence, I would have to ask Biden, why are we still supporting Israel in this war? Because the simple fact of the matter is, it's starting to look a little one-sided, and it looks like we're supporting the bully. Make it make sense. That's all I'm saying. Because the simple fact of the matter, Israel is benefiting off of us, and yet I keep asking the question, why are we giving them billions of dollars in foreign aid every year? And at the same time, we're at Netanyahu's beck and call of whether or not humanitarian aid gets to Gaza's citizens. All I'm saying is make it make sense, because from where I look at it, we're kind of supporting a dictator, even though we're not supposed to be supporting dictators, but I digress. Meanwhile, speaking of would-be dictators, Marjorie Taylor Greene is still on her pursuit to oust current Speaker Mike Johnson, because basically Mike Johnson did the one thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene cannot do. be an adult. Because keep in mind, the Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, did facilitate a deal with Democrats to avoid a government shutdown. Of course, with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and the other confused GOP people believe that Johnson is not the person that they need him to be. So again, they're trying to remove him as Speaker of the House. It is amazing to me that whenever it comes to GOP, especially the GOP that we're about right now, because keep in mind, Kevin McCarthy, the former House Speaker, did the same thing that Mike Johnson's doing. He had to make a deal with Democrats to keep the government spending going and not shut down, to keep benefits going, because he was really in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But never in the history of our Congress has a party decide to remove a House Speaker, not once, but now twice. Because again, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, someone who gets paid for spouting nonsense, someone who gets paid just for showing up, someone who gets paid for spouting all types of false information, and is practically a Trump cheerleader at this point. And yet, I keep wondering how in the world she was elected. But again, I digress, because we'll see whether or not the GOP makes good on its threat to oust the Speaker, because this will be the first time in history that like I said before, a party has ousted not one, but two speakers of the House, simply put, because they didn't do what they wanted them to do. Again, children. Moving right along, guys. Trump finally did give his stance on abortion. And you know what? Now that he said this, I'm not surprised. And if you're wondering, yes, it's a cop-out.
Right. Well, after months, I should say, not just weeks, of sidestepping this issue and not being very clear with where he stands on abortion, Donald Trump released a video statement this morning saying that he believes it should be left up to the states. He also took credit for overturning Roe versus Wade, saying that he had stacked the Supreme Court with the 3 conservative justices that helped do that. And that's kind of where he leaves this. And I want to just remind you, Sarah, that this is exactly what we have seen from him from months. He believes that this issue is a political loser. That's what he tells people privately and publicly. He notes that this is something that Republicans are very vulnerable on. And he recognizes the political landmine that kind of comes with this issue. I want you to just take a listen to how he phrased it in that video.
My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both. And whatever they decide must be the law of the land. In this case, the law of the state. Now it's up to the states to do the right thing. Like Ronald Reagan, I am strongly in favor of exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. You must follow your heart of this issue, but remember, you must also win elections to restore our culture.
Can you believe that bullshit? I'm like, again, this is a guy who is going to wind up winning the Republican nomination for president, and sat there and said after many days about his status on abortion, it should be left to the states. Are you really sure you want to say that? Because he calls it the law of the land. He calls it literally the law of the land, that states need to vote on this. Keep in mind what he said. States need to vote on this, on whether or not that should be legal or illegal. Now, before I play this next part of why I say that's bullshit, I will say it once and I'll say it again. It is always so weird to me that when it comes to the states, when it comes to the subject of abortion, you have pro-life and pro-birth people, or I like to call them confused, always fighting for the life of the child. But yet when the child is born, I don't see them rushing off to adoption centers. I don't see them rushing off to these agencies that are religious, that are turning away same-sex couples who also want to be parents. I don't see them going to Congress and saying, why do we not have more free lunch programs and daycare and after-school care for these children? I don't see them saying, why do we have more educational nutritional programs for these kids that we're fighting for? Because again, they don't care after it's born. But it's always funny that Trump sat there and said that, abortion should be led up to the states. And I keep on saying, of all things, the next story I'm about to show you explains thoroughly why that's a bad idea.
New fallout this morning over a bombshell ruling in Arizona that puts in place one of the country's strictest anti-abortion laws. Overnight, the Democratic governor furious.
The devastating impact of this ban that it will have on healthcare for women across the state is just unconscionable.
The state Supreme Court's decision reinstating a law put in place more than a century ago, 1864, before Arizona was even a state. It makes no exceptions for rape or incest, only for the life of the mother. Once the law goes into effect, which could be in the next couple of months, doctors could face prison time up to 5 years for performing the procedure.
Our state legislature and our judges in our state feel that people in the year 2024 want to go back to 1864, when slavery was legal and women didn't have the right to vote for 50 years.
The state's attorney general says she has no intention of enforcing the law.
No woman or doctor will be prosecuted under this draconian law.
Anti-abortion advocates celebrating the ruling as a win. But President Biden calling it cruel and posting a photo of former President Trump with the caption, "Trump did this," a nod to the Supreme Court's 2022 decision overturning Roe versus Wade, a decision that for decades overruled state laws like the one in Arizona. Mr. Trump has taken credit for the justice's decision.
I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade.
Mr. Trump also alluding to the realities at the ballot box since Roe was overturned, saying Republicans should avoid losing elections on an issue that should be decided by the states, in his view, a position he made clear in a video earlier this week and reiterated through his campaign in a statement on the Arizona decision, saying these are decisions for people of each state to make.
Whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state.
Already, some Arizona Republicans distancing themselves from this state ruling, including Senate candidate Carrie Lake, locked in one of the most high-profile races in the country. Just 2 years ago, she endorsed the 1864 law.
That we have a great law on the books right now. If that happens, we will be a state where we will not be taking the lives of our unborn anymore.
Now, she says she opposes it, as does her Democratic challenger.
We will have our say, and we will fight.
Hallie, as mentioned, this is a potent political issue with major repercussions for the 2024 presidential election in Arizona, a key battleground state. And there's an effort to actually have an abortion issue, a ballot issue in November. What's the status of that and what's the implication?
Yeah, abortion rights supporters who are organizing that push are confident that they have enough signatures now to get this issue on the ballot in Arizona come November. And it is not just Arizona, Savannah. There are 10 other states across the country where it is likely that voters will decide come November what kind of abortion access their states should have. And the political realities are such that since the midterms in 2022, when this has been on the ballot, voters have overwhelmingly chosen to provide some level of abortion access. We've seen that in polling, too, with the majority of Americans saying that that is something that they support. This is why this is a tricky issue for Republicans to walk right now. We saw some in the GOP trying to thread that needle, even on reproductive rights, when the Alabama IVF issue came up, for example. Keep in mind, the Democrats are going to make this front and center. They're going to try to highlight this from now through November. We've talked about, for example, that new ad out from the Biden campaign, that emotional abortion ad going after Donald Trump. A Biden senior campaign advisor tells me overnight that since this Arizona court ruling came out just yesterday, they have decided to spend what they call significantly more money on that ad in the state of Arizona, Savannah, which is a real indication of how the Biden team, how Democrats are hoping to press this issue from now until November.
And the vice president.
And again, this is Trump, ladies and gentlemen, touting elective victory. But he just sat there and said, as you've seen the video, that abortion should be left up to the states. Why does that sound like the GOP on most things? See, the GOP always says for a lot of things, leave it up to the states to decide. But if they want something that is basically their way and is going to force it down the throats of everybody else, they'll sit there and say, well, it has to be done, which again is bullshit. It really and truly is bullshit. At the same time, guys, this is why I keep saying the whole entire time that you should always pay attention to what they're trying to force through. Because again, it is abortion. Yes, the Democrats could have turned around and codified it when they had the chance. Again, they also could have packed the Supreme Court. to oppose the current judges that Trump ramrodded through to basically make the Supreme Court a conservative-leaning court. But keep in mind, this is the same guy that turned around and sat there and said, you know what? I am proud that Roe versus Wade was overturned, even though legal scholars on both sides did not want that. And he's also, again, I'm kind of curious to see what he says about Arizona, because Arizona is doing exactly what he said they would do, except Arizona is going back to 1864, where abortion was just banned and there are no exceptions. And that never ceased to amaze me that a woman, like I said, a pissed off woman, especially during selection year, should basically be able to sit there and say, as a group, you should know who you're voting in, because again, these are the people in office that are deciding whether or not you have autonomy over your body, which, by the way, you already have it. Because again, if this was guys, there'd be riots in the streets. That's all I'm saying. But again, I digress. But moving right along, guys, I want to announce Biden's new plan. Again, because Biden cannot cancel student loan debt, although he really could. He's making headway. What does that basically mean? Well, his part of his save plan is canceling runaway interest for millions of borrowers, nullifying the debt to those who are eligible, not yet participating in certain forgiveness programs, as the public self-loan. He's also going after borrowers of undergraduate or graduate loans who started paying off loans at least 20 or 25 years ago. Technically, if you fall, of course, according to his plan, if you fall within any of those categories, you should actually get your loans reduced or may see them forgiven, period. Notice what I just said at the end. Undergraduate or graduate loans that are at least 2 decades old. And yet, the interest. So as much as I want to sit there and say Biden is trying to do some things, which he has, but I will stress further, it's not going far enough. But yet everybody says the same thing about student loans. Well, it's $1.7 trillion. We can't afford that. We afforded 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We had a terrible $780 billion PPP loan program that was crap, in which 96% of that plan was actually forgiven, which means all those companies and people who had the means, who took those loans, will never have to pay them back, because guess what? We did. So again, guys, I keep pointing this out, that when it comes to the fact of student loan debt, it can be forgiven. Do I wish Biden would push forward a little bit more? Yes, obviously. I think he should. I think he should push as hard as he can, because if we can pay for wars, we can pay for student loan debt. And honestly, when the whole thing comes up of, well, what about those other people that was able to pay off their loans? Why should they be forced to pay off other people's loans? Because everybody does not have the same scenario. Everybody does not have the same means. Everybody does not have the same possible other financial wells that could have solved this problem. The only problem is, I wish they would admit, I wish that, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I wish certain GOP and certain Democrats would just admit, you benefit from American citizens owning student loan debt because they have to pay more or be denied in high-paying jobs. But again, they're paying more to the same people who are paying for you as lobbyists. Just be honest about it. Matter of fact, Robert Williams said it best. How about just like NASCAR? How about you wear everybody that basically sponsors you on a jacket, so we know you're bought and paid for? Why not? That makes sense. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well. Tennessee, my home state of Tennessee, which I call progressively backwards. How can I start this? Because I say this all the time, guys, whenever I tell y'all this about knowing what's going on in your city and your state. Well, Tennessee's heavily GOP legislature are effing idiots. What I mean by that is this, that one of the bills they're trying to pass right now is requiring public schools to show a computer-generated video on fetus development. I cannot make this up. It's literally a bill called the Baby Olivia Act, in which a group an anti-abortion group known as Live Action is the one that actually came up with this video, in which depicts a baby going through different phases of development. And again, this video, which I said is medically inaccurate, and again has slight consequences, but They want, and keep in mind, this was a Senate vote that just happened not too long ago, 26-1, that they're pushing this. And what makes this is so weird, because as I explained what the video is about, like I said, it's supposed to be elder child, it's supposed to cover. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back from the beginning on this. They're saying under the proposed law, schools must incorporate the video or an equivalent into their family life curriculum. This curriculum will cover topics such as human growth, development, and sexuality through a high-quality computer-generated animation or high-definition ultrasound of at least 3 minutes in duration that shows the development of the brain, heart, sex organs, and other vital organs in early fetal development. Let me explain something to y'all guys. This already exists. It's called sexual education. If you've been through school, 9 times out of 10, you've already seen it. It's supposed to go over the reproductive. It's supposed to go over the changes that we have as adults. It's supposed to go over what you'll experience, what women will experience through pregnancy. It's supposed to go over the development of an infant. All of that already exists. What they're wanting to show, because keep in mind, I said live action, which is anti-abortion. This goes back to the whole thing that I hate what's going on right now. That the same people who say CRT is a terrible thing, although it's never been taught in any school except law school, they even got laws banning CRT from being taught in schools. But you want to push an anti-abortion video that's basically, you call it for sexual education, but sexual education already exists, but you're saying that's not enough. How? That's my question. And again, this was passed. I cannot make this up. It passed the House 67-23. It passed the Senate 21-6. And if you're wondering, in Tennessee, yes, we are under a Republican majority. And again, that's not and again, you thought that was the crazy part, that they're going to rewrite sexual education. I wonder why. Because again, these are the people this comes from the party of family values and uppity morality. But that's not the only thing that they try to push through, which is crazy. That Tennessee lawmakers, and we talked about this last year, about them pushing a bill that allows the ability to openly carry, especially long rifles, to lowering the age of open carry permits from 21 to 18 in Tennessee, where just last year we had a shooting at a school by an individual that had a long gun. And now Tennessee's answer to that is whenever it comes to gun safety, or whenever it is as far as how we're going to ensure that it is not going to happen, or how we can curb that type of violence, Tennessee has decided that we're going to lower the age. And that, my friends, is dangerous. Like, again, I'm a gun owner. I will say it best. I am a firearms owner. And yet I'm against it. An 18-year-old can do a lot of things. I do not believe that without sufficient training, supervision, and things of that nature, I'm sorry, I just don't see them owning a firearm, nor should they. I believe the respectable age of 21 is about as good as it gets, but does it need to be lowered? Hell no, it doesn't. At the same time, if that's the case, you're telling me a kid can vote. You're telling me an 18-year-old can vote, but now they can openly carry a gun. They can't drink, because 21 and whatnot. I mean, this is also the same state that decides that on Easter Sunday you can't buy wine, but you can buy beer. So this is why I keep on telling you guys. Just off those 2 instances alone, I use my progressively backward state of Tennessee as an example. Guys, you have to be active, especially about who you put forward, who you vote for to be in your city or state legislature, because if they do dumb stuff like us, and I know Florida, Texas, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, I know that is the competition of the hold my beer belt. And I know right now Florida's winning, but at the same time, I heavily stress this is why you should get involved with your city and with your state. Because if they push through dumb stuff like this, and they do so because they've been voted in, that alone screams volumes. But as we're getting closer, like I said, guys, not a lot of news this week. So Again, Trump is doing his hardest, as usual, to duck, dive, and dodge court dates. Why? Because he's hoping the ball will run out as he gets on the campaign trail. But thankfully, some judges ain't having it.
All right, moments ago, a lot happened in this hour, folks. An appellate judge denying Donald Trump's latest attempt to delay his hush money trial. The second time that's happened in less than 24 hours. In both of these cases, Trump wanted the trial put on hold while courts considered various motions. On Monday, it was his attempt to get the trial moved out of Manhattan. Today, it was his challenge to Judge Juan Merchan's gag order, which Trump had claimed undercuts his First Amendment rights. I want to bring in Ashley Parker, Washington Post senior national political correspondent and an MSNBC political analyst. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is here with me on set, along with MSNBC's Lisa Rubin, who's back with me as well. Lisa, start us off, if you will. Give us the latest on this.
So the latest on this, Yasmin, this is the second of two attempts, as you noted, to delay the Monday start of the hush money trial. Today, what was on the table was, as Trump is appealing Judge Juan Merchan's gag order, as expanded to include the judge's family and the DA's family now. He's saying that's unconstitutional and the trial itself should be put on hold while the appeal of that issue is being litigated. Now, I also want to point out to you, this is no ordinary appeal. Usually a gag order couldn't be appealed until the end of a case when a defendant is convicted. So what they have done here is to sue the judge directly under a particular provision of New York law, where the standard for overturning the judge's action or any action by a state or local government is much higher than it would be for an ordinary appeal. I don't expect them to win on the merits, but on Monday, they get a second crack at a stay. Rather than being in front of one judge on an emergency request for a stay, they'll get to present these arguments to a 5-judge panel on the same day jury selection is slated to begin.
Yeah, so let's get this split screen straight, right? So you have jury selection beginning on Monday, in which we will all be outside the courthouse. You also have this 5-judge appellate panel, which will be hearing this from Donald Trump's attorneys. This certainly seems like it's going to be, Vaughn, an ongoing strategy throughout this trial, these kind of delay tactics in which the former president and his attorneys are taking.
And to a certain extent, they're doing the work that if you were facing a criminal trial, you'd want your lawyer to do. And Donald Trump is getting the due process that he, as a criminal defendant, deserves. And as part of this, though, he likes to take on, whether it be Judge Engoron, whether it be Judge Merchan, he likes to take on these singular individuals. But the issue for him coming up here is when we're talking about the appellate court, you're talking about another body that is going to be, in this case, ruling against him on these motions to dismiss. And so for Donald Trump, this comes at a point in time where he has made it very clear repeatedly that he does not believe these criminal trials should be proceeding during the course of this campaign and that they should be pushed off beyond November. And that is why the jury is ultimately, through this selection process, going to be New York citizens. But he has his own jury, and that's the folks in central Pennsylvania at a campaign rally on Saturday that he is going to try to win over from the podium at a time in which he does not, and he is evoking a lack of trust in the justice system, but he's going to try to win within the political system.
In the Trump civil fraud trial, there were also kind of these similar to delay tactics taken, especially when it came to the gag order that was put into place by Judge Engoron. It didn't work.
It didn't. In that case, the trial went on. The trial was already underway when Judge Engoron entered his gag order. He did succeed, he meaning former President Trump, in getting a 2-week temporarily pause of that gag order during which it was not in effect. But ultimately, it was reinstated by an appeals court. And on the merits, they found that Judge Engoron did nothing wrong, that the gag order was entirely within his rights and constitutional. I expect we'll see the.
So again, I love the fact that a judge ain't having it. Because again, Trump is doing his hardest. Keep in mind, he's trying to beat the clock. But there's another problem that Trump also has, and I still find it funny. So you guys actually remember the bond that was put up by Knight Securities? The same group that just came out of nowhere that signed on to Trump's $175 million bond after an appeals court said that a $454 million judgment is a little too extreme. So they lowered the bond to where Trump, who has apparently buku bucks of money, had to wait until he found someone to sign the cosign on that, to find someone to actually carry the bond for him. Well, there's a little bit of a problem with that. Because of right now, the bond that was posted is missing vital information according to experts. They're saying that Well, Knight Specialty Insurance Company, the company that actually wrote that actually is taking on the bond for Trump, may not be able to operate out of New York at the same time. They don't have a certificate of qualification from the Department of Financial Services. And now the New York Attorney General Letitia James is looking into the company, as she too has concerns about the bond. So as of right now, the bond itself is still active. It hasn't been rejected yet, but if it is, and I keep pointing this out because, as Trump calls it, it's the witch hunt. No, because if the company that holds the bond is not deemed qualified, the bond can be rejected. And if the bond is rejected, Trump's beyond the 10 days that he has to secure another bond. At the same time, guys, that means the judgment that's already been put in place by Letitia James go automatically into effect. And trust me, it'll be a nice, fun time to watch his assets get removed. But we will follow that story, guys, as it goes along. Because again, the bond itself by Knight Securities is being looked into. Although it did have a history of subprime loans, but again, some questionable practices that have been put into place. But we'll follow that story as it goes along. The last story I got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment of the night, imagine an officer basically plates evidence on you, right? I mean, we've heard the stories. People of color, so including myself, have always been under the impression that, we don't trust law enforcement. Why? Because you're not sure if you can make it home for a traffic stop, but you're also worried of whether or not they would plant evidence on you to catch a charge. Well, it happened in Tallahassee where an officer may have caused a person's DUI charge. And, well, look at the video first and you be the judge.
Riley. He's being stopped by the Tallahassee Police Department on South Monroe.
Hello, sir. I'm Officer Oliver with Tallahassee Police Department.
She'll plant evidence of an empty liquor bottle in Riley's car before arresting him for an alleged DUI.
And then you're also going to hear her testimony at some depositions during the criminal case questioning. And I sat through the whole thing and pulled out the important parts so that you don't have to.
An open liquor bottle found inside the car within reach of the driver would be big evidence for a DUI, right? Correct. And you told Officer Muth that the bottle was open?
I don't remember my exact phrasing.
He had a bunch of alcohol stashed in there, but
Nothing open there yet.
yeah, open.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I know that from seeing her report, she said it was opened.
And she would only know that from you?
Correct.
And has that always been your testimony?
No.
But now you know that you did unseal it?
Yes, watching my body camera.
Crazy thing is that the prosecutors didn't even care about this, and they're still prosecuting the guy. In fact, I believe it is going to trial today. This is crazy.
I'm Officer Kirsten Oliver, Oliver.
Officer Oliver, what's your current position?
I'm a police officer at the Tallahassee Police Department.
How long have you been with the Tallahassee Police Department?
Since 2020. When I was on that traffic stop, I was backup for Officer Muth, and I observed a vehicle at a high rate of speed with no headlights on pass by me. So I asked for his registration, proof of insurance, and driver's license. And while he was searching for any of those documents, it was fumbling. He looked in his center console, did not pull anything out, just stared into it. He pulled his visor down and papers were dropping, and he was trying to grab the papers out of the visor. He just seemed confused. I believed at the time it possibly smelled like alcohol.
Riley's license is suspended, and officers decide to arrest Riley on a first offense for his suspended license.
Would you be willing to do some voluntary field sobriety exercises?
Not really.
Okay. Here, go ahead and step out of the vehicle.
So once he gave me his information and the piece of paper with his name on it, I went back to my patrol vehicle and looked into law enforcement resources, and I was able to confirm his identity with his the information that he gave me. I learned that his license was suspended.
Just go ahead and face the corner of the car for us. Your license is
After
suspended.
detaining Riley,
We're
they
gonna-
ask him if he smoked any marijuana.
Maybe they learned this at some sort of training conference, but it seems like there's just so many videos of cops pulling over some black guy and saying, "I smell marijuana." Many of those videos, like this one, they end up searching the car, and guess what? They don't find any marijuana. Cops also like to smell alcohol. Here, while they did find alcohol, the only alcohol they were able to prove existed was sealed, unopened. Therefore, how did she smell it? Well, she didn't. You'll see.
Mr. Riley, I got a quick question for you.
No problem.
So I smelled marijuana in your vehicle. Did you recently smell?
No.
I believed at the time it possibly smelled like alcohol.
You told Officer Muth that you didn't smell anything, correct?
I don't believe I did. I believe I told her that I couldn't tell if it was the smell of alcohol.
That is your testimony here today.
Yes, to my knowledge.
I am now confronting the witness with her body-worn camera.
So I feel like I'm getting some indications, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't really smell anything right now. Do you think you can just talk to him?
So when you had that conversation with Officer Muth, you said that you couldn't smell anything right now, correct?
I couldn't really smell anything.
You previously, or the defense previously mentioned that you made a comment relating to you couldn't really smell anything. Could you elaborate a little bit further as to what you meant when you said that?
When I walked up to the vehicle, it wasn't 100% apparent that the smell of alcohol was apparent to me. I wanted another officer's opinion.
Once he's arrested for driving with a suspended license, they can search his car.
I entered the vehicle through the open door and I searched multiple cavities in the front seat and the back seat.
Did you find anything in the vehicle of particular importance to your investigation?
Yes, I found a insulated cup that obtained liquid and in the center console in the cup holder, and I also obtained a liquor bottle from the seat cover pouch where the knees would go inside the vehicle in the driver's seat. It was a bottle of yellowish liquid labeled vodka.
Officer Oliver leaves the car, does a 360, and then goes back in the car, retrieving a sealed liquor bottle and pours it out. That was the sound of the seal on the liquor bottle breaking. Here's another angle. While Officer Muth questions Riley about marijuana again,
Did somebody else smoke in your car earlier?
Oliver tosses the empty bottle into the passenger seat. They don't find any marijuana in the car.
Now, after Mr. Riley was arrested, you searched the car, is that correct?
Correct.
During that search, you found a bottle of alcohol.
Correct.
And that was found in a pouch on the front of the driver's seat.
Correct.
I think you said earlier it would be if the driver was sitting behind their calves, behind their knees. Is that right?
Yeah, behind the knees area.
Mm-hmm. And the bottle you found in that pouch was the 20 grand vodka, correct?
Correct.
And it was a smaller bottle.
Correct.
But bigger than the ones you get on planes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the bottle was a twist top.
Correct.
When you found the bottle, you took it out of the pouch.
Correct.
And then you put the bottle on the seat.
Yes.
And you continued then to search the car.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. As part of that search, you opened containers you found in the car, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. During that search, you didn't find any marijuana.
No.
You didn't find any joints.
No.
You didn't find any paraphernalia.
No.
You didn't find any evidence of marijuana besides the smell.
Correct.
Before finishing the search, you went back to that 20 grand bottle that you left on the driver's seat.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And you picked up that bottle?
Yes.
You opened that bottle?
Correct.
That bottle was sealed before you opened it?
Yes.
And so you twisted the top of the bottle?
Yes.
And you broke the seal?
Correct.
And you, after you opened it, you dumped out the contents?
Correct.
You dumped it onto the road?
Correct.
Then you put the top back on the bottle?
Yes.
Then you put the bottle back into the car?
Yes.
You threw it on the passenger side?
Yes.
So you usually unseal alcohol bottles and dump them out?
Typically, I don't unseal them, but as I was twisting, I realized it was unopened, and that was my fault.
And has that always been your testimony?
No.
No, but previously you said that you didn't unseal it.
Correct. I didn't believe I did.
But now you know that you did unseal it.
Yes, watching my body camera.
Rather than protect and defend.
So what's crazy is about that story, It's crazy because the person that was arrested, they're still being on trial for a DUI charge. Keep in mind, the officer that was just interviewed, whose body cam literally showed a sealed bottle of alcohol to which she opened and poured out. And yet the individual that they arrested for a suspended license is now about to literally be on trial for a DUI charge, even though the officer literally mishandled the entire situation. And this is in Tallahassee, Florida. So again, I want to know how in the world this should actually, how is that man able to go to trial? Because the officer in question, who is still under investigation, by the way, it really should be open and shut. Because the simple fact of the matter is that not only did she circumvent evidence, you smelled marijuana, couldn't detect it. And she was trying her hardest to find something. And people wonder, and I say this all the time, and yet they wonder why people don't trust law enforcement. Because you will get individuals who will pull stops like this, have nothing to show for it, and will even go so far as to manufacture something just to make their stop valid. So we'll follow that story as it goes along, but it is amazing to me how she just sat there and said, yes, I took the bottle. Yes, I broke the seal. Yes, I threw the contents. Yes, I threw it back in there. And somehow the person we arrested went from suspended license to DUI. You're doggone right. We're going to keep following this story because that person should not be in law enforcement, especially when they're like, well, I went back and saw the body cam and I realized it was sealed because I broke it. You're telling me you couldn't hear the seal break? This is why I sit there and say there needs to be more accountability with law enforcement. But I digress for now. But we've already reached the status where we're going to get to our feel-good segment. You don't have the Frack We Got Here because sometimes we cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes we faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, almost Thursday. It's about to be pre-Friday. So we believe you guys have some good vibrations. Just a couple of days ago, guys, we did have the eclipse, which got everybody's attention because it might be a while before we see another eclipse in view of the Earth again. And here is a little bit of good news about a baby whose name is interesting because they were born on the day of the eclipse. Check it out.
Definitely wanted them to have a unique name together and share that experience together. So I was like, I have my moon and now I have my sun. So I was just really excited about the name.
Well, definitely mazel tov to Soul. I mean, I can understand the mom's logic. You have a daughter named Luna, a daughter named Luna, and why not have a son named Soul? Again, definitely great to see that, and welcome Soul to the new world. Definitely got a wonderful name. I'll put that much. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. We thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting me know it's live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging, guys, before we do get out of here. Shout out to my friend Vaughn at Big BZA Dot. You can find him, Big BZA Dot, on all social media for beats and things of that nature. Definitely, guys, check out BlurStation.com. As I keep pointing this out, it is the Netflix, it is the Amazon Prime, it is the Hulu that we've always wanted. That is for us as we are building the table. Definitely check it out, guys. You can join now for $10.99 a month. After 36 months, you do have the _ability to own a piece of Blur Station. So definitely check it out. As far as yours truly, guys, you can find me, Black Spartan, Black_Spartan 615 on all socials, as I usually do reviews on everything, including gym stuff, because I like to keep in shape. Outside that, guys, the link at the bottom, make that a little bit bigger for you guys. See if you copy and paste that link into your browser, will take you to my link tree. There's YouTube and Facebook groups for all of our podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, get bit off of this podcast. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notifications. Simply put, folks, we cannot do this without you. Outside of that, guys, I do want to sit there and say, as we are coming up, this is a voting season, a very popular one, a very important one. Not just for the federal side of things, but also for the local side of things. Like Killer Mike said, Get to know who's going to be your judge. Get to know who's going to be your attorney general. Get to know who's going to be your mayor. Of all these important positions in your city and state, get to know these people, because guess what? There is a reason why they keep getting elected. And if it's not representing your values, then again, find those that are, or there's plenty of sites out there that can help you run for your city and state if you so choose to. But with that being said, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allowing you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better when we're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as a National Cybersecurity Director. All great things. When we don't learn from history, that's when we are doomed to repeat it. That's when we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll all get through this. Peace.